Hi everybody, I'm Katie West, and I'm here to introduce Ephie, and she's been a friend for, I can't count the years, a long time. And I wouldn't say that we're best friends in the way that we do life together every single day, but she's a true friend because we can go deep fast and we share the same faith, and we can talk through some tough stuff that you can't do with other people. And that's the way I would describe our friendship. But Ephie, I first physically met her when our sons were in second grade. And there was a field trip going on at the school, and there's this email running around saying, who can drive the carpool for the field trip? And Ephie had some kind of response back, you probably don't even remember this, that I can't, I'll be out of the country singing. I'm like, who is Ephie Johnson? Now, I knew who Joanne and Monroe Ballard were because I grew up on the Neighborhood Christian Center volunteering in simple ways as a high school or college or early after college student, very simple ways, nothing complex. But and then that was my first introduction to Ephie, and it took me a couple of conversations with her to realize who she was and that she was transitioning into the Neighborhood Christian Center CEO role. And I was like, wow, I overstepped my place. I was like, who are you and what do you do? Because she was going, I think to Asia to sing or somewhere. And so with that transition, she is truly a multi-talented person. She's a well-known person in the town because she leads a really important nonprofit, the Neighborhood Christian Center, and that's why she's here today to talk about that. But she is one of the most creative people, one of the most thoughtful people, one of the most really Christ-centered leaders I know, and I know plenty, and I would put her up with the very best in this city. She reaches to God to make the tough decisions, and she walks her faith daily, and that's not hard in the business. I mean, that's not easy in the business that she's in. And so, just watching her work, we serve on the board of Nexus together, and I've done some work in the past with NCC as a consultant back in the day when I had a hiccup between jobs. And I've seen her in action. I've seen her in executive action. I've seen her just in playful action. And she is a fantastic mom and wife and daughter and business leader and mother and friend to all. So I would like to introduce Ephie Johnson to come speak to us.
I'm humbled always by people saying certain things because I feel totally like all I'm trying to do is God's work. And once I realized that He died for my sins and that He gave me opportunity to live eternally with Him, while I have time on this earth, what am I going to do with it, even if I don't want to? Sometimes. And so I'm always humbled by that. And I wasn't planning on tearing up this early in the process, but thank God there's some girls here that can relate to me. But I will share, I thank Howard for inviting me, and he shared that he would like me to talk about the various different areas of my life. So I want to talk about first the Neighborhood Christian Centers, but I want to pray first and then we'll get started. So dear God, I thank you for this day. I thank you for these that are in this room that have gotten up so early, God, to seek your face and to learn more about the work in this city, the works that are being done in this city. I thank you for Howard and his vision. Thank you for Katie and her friendship. I thank you for these other gentlemen and ladies that have been brought today to learn more about your work. And I just give you praise, honor, and glory. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, so just first I'll talk through Neighborhood Christian Centers, and then this will kind of give context to just our work right now. And I know a lot of people are concerned about, what's happening in the city. This is being recorded, so I want to be very mindful that I'm not going to probably get as deep into some of the things that I've experienced or we're experiencing even as of yesterday. So if you'd like to ask certain questions, I could come back for one-on-one conversations. We could cut this off for your questions, but I'd prefer that those be done off camera. All right, so first of all, the history of Neighborhood Christian Centers, that we were formally established in 1978, but the ministry began in 1968, or even before that, with my parents, Monroe and Joanne Ballard, who married in 1965. I was born in 1968, so that's why all the great things started by that time. But my mother was orphaned right before she turned a year old, and my who I call my grandparents, which were her adoptive parents or foster parents, she was taken into their home along with 2 other siblings, and that would be the last of 48 siblings, children that they would have raised. They never had their own children. They always kind of just helped everybody else with their kids, and but my mom and my uncle and aunt were the ones that they had extended time with. They raised them from her age of really birth to her going away to college, and my grandmother, after my grandfather passed away, was moved to Memphis, where she lived with us for the rest of her life, which was about 30 years. So she was like 60 something when she moved there. Like, she's still amazing, like a whole nother life, you know. So when I think about what she did, because she took my mother in, she had to be in her 40s probably, and so she lived 2 lives, there and here. My mother, when she graduated from high school, she moved on to West Virginia, and when she went to West Virginia, she was pursuing law. So she was in pre-law school there, where the college was, and there was a tent revival one day. And she decided that she and her friend were going to go to the tent revival, and the Lord just compelled her to do something different. She said, I'm going to leave school. So she exited the school she was in and applied and was accepted into the Nazarene Bible College, seminary there. And she was the first woman to go. And when she went through all the processes of how people have to adapt to someone that doesn't, look like them or hadn't been a part of the group, accommodations and such. And so she did all of that, and then she graduated. First woman graduated, and they sent her to Memphis, Tennessee. So in this stage of that organization, that church, women weren't pastoring the church, but they could help establish the church. And when she went to establish the church and establish the Sunday school, she began to look around the community and say, why are people not coming to church? And so when she would go around and do assessments and things like that, I'm making it way more high level than it was. She was just like, walk around like, what's going on? And they were like, I'm not sending my kid to church and I don't have any clothes. I'm not sending my kids to church, whatever. So she started taking her little stipend that she received, and that's how she began to build the church, by understanding that the needs of the people were hindering the work of what the church was trying to do. So how do you bridge that? And that's what she began to do. So my father was the 3rd eldest of 8 children, and he was not he did not read or could not read proficiently at the age, even in 6th grade, so he couldn't read. And so my grandfather, since the 7 of his 8 children, 7 of the children that were 5 and above, he sent them to Piney Woods Country Life School. When they went to this school, this was the only black school that was that could accommodate what they were looking for, that would teach the kids, keep the kids in a boarding setting, so what do you call it? Well, anyway, you know what I'm saying. They went to school there, they stayed there, and dormitory setting. And then they went all the way through junior college. So there were not a lot of places for African American or black families to go, and so when he went there, that was really a great opportunity for them. My father graduated from there. He could read after that, and he went from there to the Army. Then he came back and went to Alcorn State College. After he completed Alcorn State, he came to Memphis, and he began to teach school. He taught school for 31 years at Douglas Elementary. Met my mom in that process of what I shared about her coming here to Memphis in the 60s, like 62, 63, and there was there's some stories to go along with that. But anyway, when they met and they eventually married, they had just very like-hearted, like thoughts about how you serve people through the lenses of what they had gone through. So when my father was teaching school, I was running into people every day that say, or every few days, that say, your dad was my teacher. Ooh, they used to whip you back then. I tried to do right. And they speak about it in fondness. That's what's amazing. I'm like, he did you too, huh? He used to whip you too. But anyway, I try to get as few of those as possible. I think my father gave me a spanking like one time. I was like, it won't ever have to happen again. But anyway, he taught that science class, and he began to see the needs of the children in that class and just in the community of Douglas. And so he had a science lab in his actual practicum lab, and then the classroom, and he would bring eggs and sausage or whatever, and he would cook in his lab breakfast for kids that didn't have food. This is before you had free lunches and free breakfast, all that stuff. And the parents started requesting to have him as their teacher, their students' teachers. And even a generation later, like, I was in his class and I want my kid in that class. And so that was kind of how the process of learning and building trust in the community began. And then folks start saying, hey, I'm not really doing as well with my kid as I'd like. I want to help them to progress and do the things they need to do in life. Can they stay with you over the weekend? And so they could stay with us. And then over time, they would say they could stay extended periods of time, like forever. And so my parents raised over 75 children in our home. Most of them were over the age of 16, like 16 to 21 years old. At that time, what we would call opportunity youth age now would be what they were already working with. And as we know, a 21-year-old is not necessarily grown, but folks put people out, like, you 18, it's time for you to be grown now. I could never wrap my head around that. I'm like, I birthed you. Now you're 18, you're out of here. So my parents didn't have that philosophy. My father said, until you get married, you don't have to ever leave. That's what he felt about us. And so I took him up on that. But I was 23 when I got married, so there you go. But anyway, but my father and mother took a 2-bedroom home and turned it into a 2-bedroom, 1 bath into a 9-bedroom, 5-bathroom house. And it took some time. My mother would like to make sure I say that she had a lot to do with the physical building process of that. I used to say, I helped my daddy put the sheetrock up, and she said, you don't remember when I was up in the attic helping to do that? So I had to make sure I give her credit for also helping to add on to the house. But anyway, my father felt that every child needed to have their own room, their own lock on their own door. And so those were very important things for kids that were going through different types of situations in their homes, and also just ownership. Everyone needs to feel ownership. And so they were very, very intentional about that. So there's so much I could just share about that whole experience with my family, but this gives you context for how we evolved into who the Neighborhood Christian Centers, or what the Neighborhood Christian Centers is today, and why I function in the way I do. By the way, because my father's a teacher, every summer he would do welding, he would do whatever you had to do to keep things, keep our house functioning. I remember getting up early in the morning with my siblings, and we would go to South Memphis. Well, actually, I'm sorry, not my siblings. They did not go with me to South Memphis. It was me and my dad, and we would have to cut down these big old tall trees, because I'm 8 years older than my little brother and 3 years older than my sister. So I just want to make sure we have that in context. I worked really hard with my father, and we had to cut, and I had to drag limbs to the front. It's the whole thing. I need counseling. It's okay. But anyway, it was really fun. But anyway, we had to do work, and so I know about what it means to cut down a tree, how to cut down a tree. I know about sheetrock. I know about welding. My father took me in the 6th grade to Next Air when it was off of Chelsea, and I got my welding cap, which is not called that, but I'm just telling you that. And I know how to do all of that. And I had holes all in my socks. My mom was like, you got holes in your socks? So I had to wear the same socks so we didn't keep messing up all the socks, because the little pellets that would come off the metal. But anyway, so I have all these experiences. So when people see me now and they say, why do you do so many different things? How do you know I do so? Because my daddy had us doing everything. And we had to do it because that was how he creatively kept us engaged, and also it created money for our household. So that's what I know. And that's why I live the way I live. I'm not trying to make people think that I'm just the girl trying to do all the things. We did all the things because we had to do them all. So I hope that makes sense now. But anyway, so our mission is to guide those in need towards stability and sustainability through compassionate, Christ-centered ministries and empowerment programs. And that mission has evolved over the years, but is the most succinct message about what we are about every day. And then we follow the anchor scripture, Matthew 25, 35, 36, for I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. And more over my years of being at Neighborhood Christian Centers, 2008, I became the president and CEO. Before that, I opened up the Neighborhood Christian Centers in Decatur, Alabama, where we still have that location today. My husband and I went and planted that in 1996. And 1993. And when we came back to Memphis, I became the administrative director. And I was in that role until 2008, which was like the best year you could become president and CEO of a nonprofit. That's when the downturn of the economy was. Why not? So I had to raise $3+ million in an economy where nobody was raising anything, and God was faithful. We never missed a check for any person. We never stopped doing the work we did. When I took over as president, we had 5 locations, and we have 13 now. And so God has always allowed us to progress. Now, I did go back one time, so we ended up with 4. I was like, I'm failing. But it made sense that we had gone down to 13 staff during my time of just restructuring and refinement. But the Lord had a plan in that process, and I've experienced what I thought was failure was really pruning, and God teaching me what it meant to build and what it meant to fail, so that you can know how to build, how to restructure, how to strategize. If I did it from my mom's work and my dad's work, I really didn't have context for what it meant to really do the work. And then how do I make it not changing from them to me as I got it better, I know how to do it better than you. It was that eventually it would have to become a part of my purpose and their legacy. And so that's how I learned to do what I'm doing through the process. And this is part of it. And then our system of care is a service model that operates an organic approach to build trust and respect, relationship acceptance, multicultural sensitivity, and a village approach that strengthens the fabric of the communities we serve. And then we began to incorporate a model, because everyone, you have to be evidence-based. So it's this fine line of being a nonprofit that is faith-based, and also being able to be competitive for grants and for things and how people give now. Not just grants, but with philanthropy, it's a lot more sophisticated. And so my mother had written 3 or 4 books. Those were somewhat anecdotal in just supporting the work that we did. And so if you read that, you could process and understand our work. But how do we demonstrate outcomes? How do we establish metrics? How do we know that we are really changing a life? And so we, over the years, I've been praying about, what do I do? And I learned about Marcella Wilson and Transition to Success. And it was pretty much a dovetail approach. She had all of the evidence-based systems that would connect with exactly what we were doing every day. And so we incorporated that in 2018, and that was exactly what we needed to incorporate, add our social workers, give definition to what our street level engagers were doing, how we measure us giving clothes or giving food to the stability levels of a person, to move them from just being stable to sustaining. And that's a different process. And so this was very important for us to do that. And we used a Likert scale that allows us to measure from 1 to 5, one being the poorest of situations that you could be in, the most critical, to 5 being sustainable. So it was easy for us to translate that for any lay person to help us do, as well as having LMSWs and LCSWs, which I never had to hire before, and begin to incorporate that. So I had to learn all of that in order to understand the process and the strategies that would be needed to incorporate our mission, so we wouldn't lose that while we were doing the work for demonstrating outcomes. So our pillars of service, compassionate services, that's kind of how we began. What we do is the Matthew 25, 35, 36, that's what God has called us to do. And then youth engagement services, how do we integrate what we do into ensuring that students have activities, but also that we're moving them toward opportunities to have their own lives. Many times, as you know, that the kids that we serve, it takes 18 years to get them from their current situation to possibly move into a trade or career. 18 years per person, and depending on what age you get them, you still have to go through those years. And then you're dealing with the parents or auntie or grandmama or whomever and their opinions about what that means. So when we write these down, it looks so easy to just read it off. But youth engagement services means I got to go pick you up because your mama won't go and get your birth certificate, and we need you to get that so that we can help you get this job. Oh, you don't have an ID. Oh, okay, you can't. You don't even know what FAFSA is. Your mom won't fill it out. So we had to create all these initiatives or services around what it means to just get one child to stable. And then you give them a job or you give them work, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But and then we had to create boundaries and policies so parents wouldn't take their money in the summer. So you made how much this summer? $1,000. We got a $400 light bill. You live here too. And so we had to create ways to protect the students, the children, the youth, while we're also supporting and helping the parent understand what the differences are, and then finding ways to help them because they do need the help. I hope that makes sense. So adult and family services incorporates some things I'll talk about a little later with our workforce development programming, and then our Bible programs, Bible studies we do for our moms, especially particularly moms with fathers and men if they're willing to come. There's a lot of challenge with that because most of the properties we serve, men are not living, they're not on the lease, but they're living there. And so we are trying our best to be a light that draws them as well. So adult family services is a very strong part of our work as well. So I've kind of shared what Compassionate Ministries is, and this, as far as outcomes, we've had 35,000 interactions. That's about probably 30,000 people that we've assessed, that we've served in 2021 with nutritional food assistance and nutritional support. We also have other works that we do with. We had $250,000 that we partnered with the city and with MLGNW to distribute for people needing utility support. So we do those things as a social service agency, and then as a ministry we do the work that you see us doing here. And then I talked about the youth engagement services. We address all the things that you see here listed here, including mental health, social emotional support, vocational preparation. We have access really over 1,500 kids now. This is last year's numbers, but we have 130 students that are enrolled in our literacy program. So you have 1,500 kids. We probably engage with about 400 or 500 of them every day. What happens to the other 1,000 kids? Well, those kids come in and out as they will. They receive lunches from us. They receive. We have activities on site, but people are a little different these days, and so just like folks Well, I'll tell you a quick story. I was talking to one of our guys. I said, "Hey, I hadn't seen you at church lately. You coming to church?" He said, "Oh, I just took a little break." I said, "Well, we got to keep on coming to church now." Okay, I'll log back in. So this is different for me. So when you say 130 kids, we have 1,000 that log in and out, but about 500 that are in person that are really wanting to be engaged and help move them in the direction they need to go. Over the past 6 years, like I was sharing, when you're working with kids, you're identifying a core group that is going to move from with you through our cohort, if you will, over a period of time. So we identified 6 years ago probably about 90 plus students that were going to be graduating from high school by 2021. By 2022. We've tracked them over 6 years. 84 of the 85 students graduated from high school. Thank you. And it was really 93, but by the time we knew who was going to stick with us, it was about 85. 77.65% of those students went straight to college, graduated, went straight to college. 14% of those students obtained employment immediately following graduation. And then 7% participated in trade education immediately following graduation. And all of them had to participate or were offered trauma-informed services. So we're talking about people that have a lot of issues, and they still made it through. There's 1,500 or more out there with us, right? But these got through. So we only serve the most challenging families. We'll serve anyone, we don't turn anyone away. But the people that participate in our programs are not folks that, hey, I got a car, I live in Cordova, I graduated from this program, or my friend told me about this program, and I'm gonna bring my kid over here every day because it's free, and we get that. But people like that already take initiative. Their kids are gonna do fine if they stick with them. These children are ones that the parents are not engaging with them at all, other than us begging them to please sign this sheet for the 7th time so your kid can participate in this program. So these are the types of, when we talk about these numbers, we're talking about kids that should not have made it without the surrogacy support of those like our team that do this work. And then our adult programs focus on life skills, relationship-based programming, and helping them to understand that they need skills not just at work, but for how their home life as well. I was sharing, like I said, we'll cut screen in a minute. Cut this off in a minute. And I'll talk a little bit about, what our engagers, our social workers have to deal with every day in communities that used to be just people that were in need. And we'll talk about how that is evolved into what it is now. And then we also serve families with multi-generational case management. And that's 3 generation now. You probably heard 2-gen. Everybody's talking about 2-gen. Well, it's really 3-gen. And Wade, we know why. Because your grandmothers are 29 years old now, okay? So we're talking about 3-gen is very much important because grandmamas that are under 40 trying to go to the club too, you know what I'm saying? All right, so it's the same, it's what we're dealing with. All right, so shoot, I had my first child at the age some of the folks that I serve or work with are having grandchildren. So this is a 3-generational situation that we're working with now. And then, of course, our life skills. And then marriage. We really push and encourage. If you're going to be together for as long as you have, why don't you consider marriage? So we work with families to be a part of our marriage program. If they are living together, they can come to our monthly sessions and learn what it means about marriage. Married couples come as well. When we do the retreats, they can't do the retreats, but they can do our day programs. And we'd love for y'all to come and give testimonials or be a mentor to one of our couples, that would be a wonderful thing. So, I see 2 takers right there. Okay, great. I'm excited. I'm so excited. All right. So y'all can't go on a retreat either. I got you. Watch out now. All right. And then Bible studies. We have, of course, we're Christ-centric, and we offer Bible studies to all that will be willing to come. And then our Holy Cakes Workforce Development and Social Enterprise is an enterprise that, if you know Bowie Campbell, what's her, Carter Campbell. So Carter Campbell's wife, y'all might know her. She had a baking service, and she had collected a significant amount of clientele, and she decided, no, how are you doing? And after a while, she felt like that her time was up with that, and she was looking around to see if anybody would be interested in taking her clientele. And I was like, sure, because I'm an entrepreneur as well. And I was like, well, we can do something with this. And we had helped Rick and Carrie Moore lift what eventually became my cup of tea. It was just the house at first, and then it evolved. And so once that stabilized, they began to do that work, and I think they're doing amazing. But Neighborhood Christians was ready to now go back into that world again. And so we took Bowie's Cakes, which she said she really didn't have a name for it, but that's what I'm calling it. And we rebranded it, and we call it Holy Cakes. And it's because there's a hole in it. And then we added the EY so people to understand that, but it was a play on words because we Neighborhood Christian Center. Amen. All right, so anyway, you go to holycakes.org and you could order cakes. Well, what we did, we took our workforce program, merged it with Holy Cakes, and now every person that comes through that program, whether they're asking or needing money for utility assistance, or they're needing workforce, actually looking for a job or life skills, they are funneled through that program in some way, and they all end up working in the cake, in the bakery at least 2 or 3 days before they can graduate. And some of them like the idea of doing that, and we keep them for a while. We've hired 2 girls full-time, and in the first year, I think we produced over $20,000 in cakes. Every $25 cake purchased allows us to pay 1 worker for 1 hour plus administrative fees that go along with that and what the cake costs and so on and so forth. So we have to sell a whole lot of cakes because we have a lot of people to help. And each one of those that come through our program have a 3-week opportunity with us to be in that program before they graduate and either move on to cross-training in the organization, or they go to a job, or we continue on to whatever else they need. And so this program has really given us the opportunity to have a more tangible way of connecting with our clientele and begin to observe their work behavior, some of the things they're dealing with, anger management, all kinds of things that you can observe and watch. And there is a baking therapy. I didn't know there's actual baking therapy approach that we are using. I think it's actually a real thing, but we're developing a lot more. And what that means is everything we do in this room, probably with your parents or you've done with your own kids, God built us that we'll be a 2-parent unit with our children. Well, we're dealing with a lot of people that are orphaned from that original design. So Katie's in the house with your boys, you're cooking, they're watching you cook, they come in, Mom, I have a report due. When does it due? In the morning. Oh, wow, you didn't know that 2 weeks ago? No, ma'am, I didn't. Okay, well, get your chair and sit here with me. This is what I'm talking, really my life, okay? Sit here with me, and I'm fixing whatever, and I'm saying, okay, what's number 1? What are you supposed to be doing? Okay, whatever. Okay, and I'm talking through it, and I say, now next time you do something, and I know PDS gave you something to write in the book about when your schedule is supposed to be stuff, and I know so let's work through that. All right, and then we talk about it, and it's not really therapy, but I'm teaching all the time, and I'm cooking. And then my oldest one, who likes to bake, he was like, Mom, can we bake a cake? Can we do this? And I ain't trying to be in the kitchen. That is not my world, okay? But I'm doing what I got to do because God gave me these children, you know. And so I'm like, okay, let's make this cake or whatever we got to do. And he's loving it. And I'm like, so how things going? You ain't picking on nobody at school. Anybody picking on you? Because I will, and we all of that, we're just going through. So it's like this therapy thing, right? But it's not really therapy. It's just social emotional health. It's right. It's biblical. It's what you do. Well, that's not happening every day in a world where you're trying to survive. Anybody got no time to talk? Well, there's time, but we're not using it wisely. And so when we take baking therapy or people in the kitchen working with us, then we get to talk about, so do you have your ID? No, why do you have your ID? Well, go ahead and put the butter in there. Okay, good. Now, what we want to talk about, so this is how we engage with people in a life-on-life way, and they're still learning a trade, they're learning how to work, we're observing behavior all at the same time. So I think that's really cool. So that's what we do every day. And about 10 to 12 people go through that every 3 weeks. And so we're doing our part there. As I share, we have these 13 locations that we've added to. If you look really hard on here, you'll know that there are people, some of these sites have been in the news as of yesterday. So where are we today? NCC has witnessed, and you don't have to cut it off yet though, citywide increase in criminal activity across the neighborhoods NCC serves. We first were working with people in need, and we served their need. There was this low-level knowledge of things happen, and just be mindful, be watchful, but is now dispersed throughout the city, and it is random in some ways. It's not as random as we think, it's just more people doing it that have access. You can drive, you can go anywhere you want to go. So it used to be in this loop with 240, you can drive around it, it was just here. People didn't, people would say, most people we serve don't go 3 miles outside the radius of their home. But what did we start doing? We started showing you where things are beyond 3 miles radius of your home. So you have a whole lot of children that grew up in programs, not just ours, that have been taken all around the city. And I think the exposure is great, but it also shared this is the city. And when you don't have a foundation of choices from a moral compass perspective and also from a desperate perspective, you say, when I went over here, I saw this. We don't have this here. I'm going to do that. I hope that makes sense. So this is not to not pour into people and to serve people. I think we just have to understand, and mine is not the only theory, I'm just talking, okay? But all of this contributes to the exposure, the knowledge. And now, if we don't all come together and be on the same page about how we want to serve and love people, you're going to continue to have more and more problems. When I go to Ridgecrest, when I go to the sites that I serve and help with, and I am a president and CEO, my role is to be the face of the organization, go to a whole bunch of board meetings, okay, learn about grants, whatever it is, and then help people, to do what they got to do, right? And I process that. They're boring, but I appreciate them. I just want to say that, okay. But not all of them are boring. Okay, just want to say that too. But anyway, when you go to these meetings, and that's great that I could do that. But then what's happening on the street? That's where I come from. I know that. And so I had to figure out, how do I become a working president, a client-facing president, where I can go in and understand what not only are the people that we're serving going through, but what are my staff, what are the changes that they're experiencing, the paradigm shifts that are occurring. So there's a lot to that, but I just wanted to share. We're beginning to observe that more, because now we have to have a heightened sense of things, not just going in and doing what we used to do. All right. I'm sorry about going over time. High poverty plus high crime, and they did that backwards. So it's high poverty plus high need equals high crime. That's not an absolute math statement there, but it's pretty close, all right? That if you have high poverty, you're gonna have high need. And then if you don't have a way to provide for that need, you're going to find a way. And there's pride in people speaking to, my children was hungry, it was cold, and we didn't have no coats. So I went to Burlington Coat Factory and got me some coats, because I had to get some coats for my kids. And that sounds very rational. And you can go to jail for trying to keep your kids warm. So from my empathy side, I get it. From the other side, you can't do that. So how do we teach people? And it's one person at a time. It is too big to fix by trying to say, we're going to do this program and let's fix everything. No, it is one life at a time. I don't care what you create. The people are people, whether it's you in this room or people we're serving in the community. We can't even get off of caffeine. Okay, so how are you going to get a person off of drugs and not think they're going to return? If you eat and you like food and you say, I'm going to stop eating so much bread or flour and sugar, and you know good and well that that's what you like, and you stop for 6-8 months and you lose 42 pounds, you're like, I'm good now, I'm gonna start eating bread again, right? So that's simple stuff. Imagine living in a situation where you don't have anything but that as your entertainment, as your escape. And then I'm telling you from a middle class or wealth perspective, what you should be doing as a person that's in a impoverished class. There are different rules of engagement at different levels. So our expectations here is that you should make better choices. That's not, people in poverty don't talk about choices. We, middle class and higher, talk about choices. Poor people talk about what choice you made for me. What line do I have to be in? Okay, so when you are thinking from that perspective, your decision making is not the same, and we're thinking about other people as though they're thinking like we think. There's a lot to that. I can come back for another session, but that's that. Otherwise, I own 2 gourmet popcorn shops. I have a company that is called Bluff City Handling that does large commercial cuts. We call them cuts, but cutting grass, large cuts. A lot of that with the city. And then I have a company that, in that same company, we also can remodel, like we're doing Court Park Square. We're redoing their gazebo, we're doing all the wrought iron fencing. So I designed those things. And that's what I do with my companies that I've decided to create, so I could create work for other people and also create something beyond my missionary work's salary. And to make sure my kids and my family had the things they needed while we're helping people with what they need. That was the early stages, and now I ain't got no children really at home no more, but people like, you created a job for me and I still need my job. So I was like, oh, I gotta keep doing this. So it's good, if I do it, it's gonna be big, you know what I'm saying? So I gotta keep on doing it, so I keep on growing. So that's what we're doing. Then I created something called Bluff City Praise. So it's one of the most creative, more of the creative side of me, where I wanted to, I know the singing world and the music world, and a lot of people don't get paid to do that, but they they can do it as a hobby, but give them a little something. So I created a for-pay production company where we do big shows, and so I'm working on a big show that hopefully, the boy over here that just left, we're working on now with Elvis Presley and some other places. So I have some ideas for Memphis, and if you're going to create work, if you're going to create opportunities for people, then you have to do things that are big. You can do things that are small if that's what you do, but if you do big things, think about what you're going to do to incorporate and help people in a big way, like you've done. When you didn't do just, let's do a little club where people can play volleyball. No, football is big. A lot of people can participate in it. So you give people a lot more chances to succeed. and have opportunity. Same thing, the way I see things. Create things that are big. So I audition 25 people and say, you're hired. And now put pressure on me to find jobs for us. So we're going to do big shows somewhere, including Las Vegas or wherever they'll let us do residencies. And that's the kind of concept. So I created those things, and I've learned them, I work in them, I do them. And my philosophy when I'm teaching young people that are creating jobs from the ground up that did not come from wealth, which I did not come from, is you have to give your boss 100%. And whatever your dream is, you have to give it 100%. And they don't equal to 200 because you can only have 100%. But I tell them 24 hours in a day. If 24 hours in a day, I only need about 6 hours of sleep. Those other 18 hours or so, it's 15 to 18 hours should be given to my work first, the work that I committed to that someone hired me to do, and the other side is what I commit to how I develop. And no one is telling me to go home and write out business plans or to write out concepts. Nobody said go audition 25 people and promise them they're gonna have a job. Nobody said create 2 popcorn shops. Nobody said that. But I was watching the world. And I would say, how can I help? Not just what I'm paid to do, but how can I create something that I wasn't asked to do so I can be a part of the solution? So that's what I do every day. That concludes my presentation. I hope it was worth you getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning.